I'm going to pull up this story here from U.S. News. Fears about World War III are growing amid Russia-Ukraine war. Survey finds. Gee, I wonder why. Well, the Pope said we are in World War III. But this is interesting stuff. They said here we go. Look at this. Russia's unprovoked war with Ukraine. And I'm just like, is this an op-ed or is it a survey? Okay.
The provocation for people to get reference is like if Russia had a military base, and this is what Dave Smith said again, in Montreal, and they took it over, and then they were establishing military forces and long-range missiles in Montreal. And then for us to go in and be like, no, we're taking it back, we're liberating it. That would have been, and to say that it was unprovoked of us to go back into Montreal when Russia had been building up there, that's provocation.
Well, right. I want to read the story.
Go ahead.
They say in a survey of more than 70,000 people across the world, 3/4 of respondents agreed with the statement. I fear we are moving closer to World War III. The findings are culled from the U.S. News and World Report Best Country Survey. Yada, yada. It's from April 30th to July 13th. This survey was done before all of this went down. The craziest part is this. 80% of those in 5 countries, Indonesia, South Korea, Spain, Thailand, and the U.S., believed that we are heading towards a global war. Those surveyed within the age range of 25 to 35 were the most fearful, with 76% worrying about nations moving closer to another global conflict. So, you know, what I think about when I see this, we always read history and it's condensed. And now we don't know which direction things will go. But I suppose the question I have is, are things de-escalating? The answer is a resounding no, especially with NATO saying we will, as a collective, respond to an attack on our infrastructure, which, here's what I think. It sounds like what they're saying. NATO forces, Western aligned interests destroyed the pipeline. And that statement was, Russia, if you retaliate, we will go to war with you.
That's exactly what it was. And them trotting out Biden having said this just a few months ago, that if they invade Ukraine, we're going to get the pipeline. They can point it right back at us. And he gave them, that's another example of not having a president that knows what he's saying when he's saying it.
Yeah, you know? Well, before, the president said it, the Deputy Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland, said this. I just did a video about her. She's a fascinating human being. She's known as the kind of, the lady of the neoconservatives, Miss Dick Cheney Light. She served under Dick Cheney during the Iraq War. She had her hand in almost every single U.S. global intervention in the past 30 years. And she said in January that if Russia invades Ukraine, Russia will not be having the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
One way or another, she said.
And then Biden came out and I think made that particular statement that you're referring to.
No. Nuland said one way or another, there will not be a Nord Stream pipeline. And Joe Biden said there will not be a Nord Stream if Russia invades Ukraine. Then a reporter follows up and says, how will you do this? It's controlled by Germany. And he says, I promise you we will get it done. And then he smirks.
Yeah. And this is earlier this year, right before the invasion, right before the war. And even Salon came out and wrote an article saying how appointing Victoria Nuland to Obama's foreign policy team was, quote, a really bad idea if she's going to be a key player in his foreign policy because it's a high risk to everyone. So even Salon, even leftist news organizations were saying, hey, please, let's not appoint her to positions of power because this is going to lead to chaos. This is going to lead to war. She literally had her hand in almost every single conflict the last 30 years. And for her to still be calling the shots. She's also known as the lady that was organizing protests and working as a diplomat overseeing the Ukrainian revolution in 2014. I did a full video about this. It's fascinating to see her hand in this entire conflict from the very beginning, pushing the envelope. And I think we're reaching a situation where that envelope is about to fall off of the table because she is really going for it when it comes to instituting American policy that has put us on this pathway since 2014 that is extremely dangerous for everyone here.
Here's a question that I have when it comes to this stuff. Is it worth war with Russia? Question. What do you think? Is any of this worth the potential of a nuclear war?
No. None of it's worth it to us.
Now, hold on. So let me ask you a question. Let's localize the conflict. Wokeness. All right. We're in a culture war, something that we are particularly worried about. Is it worth the culture war to stop what they're doing to kids and the indoctrination,
Yes.
even if it leads to civil war.
Even if it leads to civil war. Well,
If we are looking down the barrel of overt civil war, is there a point where you would say, I am willing to lay down my arms to prevent war, knowing that it means the woke people will win and their gender ideology and the things that happening with kids will increase tenfold? Would you lay down,
no. I think when you're talking about innocence, when you're talking about innocent children and what adults want to go to, then there's a line there. There's a moral line where you can say no. I'm not. Right. I'm going to pick up my arms.
Right. So my point is not to in any way insinuate people should be fighting. They shouldn't be. Right. It's a question of when we localize the issues that we care about, when we think about it in the context of something that we're more directly concerned about. We as people, living and working in the United States and very focused on domestic issues, we don't know the full scale of the war. What we do know is that I don't want to die for whatever BS they're working on with Ukraine, right? Mm-hmm. The issue, I suppose, is understanding that feeling you have of I will not back down in this culture war and in this political battle with what the left is doing with all this woke ideology stuff. They won't. The same is true for what the U.S. and Russia are doing. It's a question that you can go to Western intelligence and say, is it really worth it? Why don't you just let Russia do their thing? Because otherwise we have nuclear war. And they're going to say, we will not stand for this. Russia will be asked the same question. Absolutely not. We will never lay down our arms. And then it's just dominoes falling over where everyone ends up losing. It's a pissing contest. Everyone just covered in piss.
But what is the U.S. goal here? I mean, because I think the Russian goal is at least a bit more plainly clear. They don't want to see, just like they agreed to in 2014, a buildup in Ukraine, right? We agreed
it's way
to.
more complicated. Than that.
Well, I know it's more complicated.
Russia's trying to rebuild the Soviet Union, basically.
I know that. Yeah, I know. But so the goal of the United States is to keep that from happening, right? And
partly because Gazprom controls most of the pipelines going into Europe.
You think they really want the Soviet Union back again?
Oh, Putin's talked about it.
Yeah,
we just went and sat down with
He has.
Who was he sitting down with? And he was like, he said something like, "Remember who you work for," or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Putin also sees NATO as a legitimate threat against Russia and its people as well.
Of course.
As well as trying to bring back the old kind of Soviet empire as well. So we have to understand that. Also, the larger geopolitical picture is complicated because of the new energy exploration that has been done in the southern coast of Ukraine that has found that Ukraine could soon become a major petrostate. If Ukraine becomes a major petrostate, the one leverage that Russia has in all of Europe is totally gone. They will have a competitor on its doorsteps that will also house a lot of its troops that they see as someone that will potentially invade them in the future. So there's a lot of things happening here behind the scenes. There's a lot of things geopolitically, also with energy policy that people need to understand, and it's far more complicated than just unprovoked attack. It's not just that. There's a lot more involved here.
They hate us for our freedom.
Exactly.
I think the goal is like global security. If you had to ask what's the U.S. goal here, not the number one top goal isn't just prevent the Soviet Union from forming. It's global security, and part of doing that is to prevent a Soviet Union. But honestly, we need to police ourselves, and we can do that with Russia as a federation of states, of people. Like, they're just people like us. They have a red, white, and blue flag. They broke up a crazy dictocratic state, just like we got out of the Kingdom of England. We're in this together.
We're not.
We are, as people on Earth, breathing the same air and drinking the same water.
You have people who fundamentally view the world differently than each other, and there is no reconciling.
Well, that will always be the case. That we view it differently. But the reconciliation is you just deal with it. That's what we've done for 250 years in this country.
No, you don't. Right now, there are Uyghur concentration camps in China. We do not lay down and accept what China is doing to these people.
We are.
No,
I mean, we have for like a decade.
The United States is doing what they can, I suppose, with trying to avoid war. This is the point I'm trying to make with even civil war in the United States. We don't want to fight.
Yeah.
We don't want people to die, but we need this to stop. So we're constantly clashing with opposing forces that view the world fundamentally differently than we do. And there is no just stopping and saying, you know what, we're all people, China. Why don't you just forcibly rape those women and force their abortions? Well, you got to learn the language
first.
Never do.
This whole America first thing is ridiculous. This whole line of demarcation, calling us the West, it's all British centric. Like, come on, you got to learn Russian and Mandarin if we want to peacefully resolve this stuff.
Well, there is a good point there, because name a Chinese diplomat that doesn't know English. You know what I mean? That's something I've always thought about. When you're talking about speaking, I worked with Chinese students, for example. They knew exactly what I was saying, when I was saying it, how I was saying it, the connotation, the things behind it. And when they would speak, nothing. And when they would try to translate some of their things, some of the things they would say in their language to me, I couldn't quite get what they were saying, and they knew it. And that is a good point, that we need to maybe branch out at least our understanding of what other languages we're speaking, so we can make an attempt at least to try to understand where they're coming from. But that doesn't mean we can accept ever that atrocities that's like going on in China with the Uyghurs and with the women that they abuse, and there's videos of them
general.
running over old women in tanks and things like that.
But at the same time, the Chinese are answering back like, okay, you're making these accusations against concentration camps. What about what you did in Gitmo? What about the CIA rendition programs? And we're seeing Chinese diplomats answer that back. And at least American policy should exemplify and practice the principles that it preaches to bring onto other people. And then those arguments would be more legitimate. But of course, there is a lot of criticism when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to the military-industrial complex, when it comes to corporations and private industries that have been creating massive amounts of human rights violations, especially in Yemen, especially all over the Middle East, that again should be called out as well, stopped immediately if we're going to be lecturing other countries about human rights.
But rest easy, my good friend Luke, because right now we can all huddle up to the warm bosom of Joe Biden, knowing that with his strength, America will not be defeated. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.